All right, now we are on to synthesis and decomposition reactions. Okay, so again, reviewing from our textbook. In synthesis reactions, two elements or compounds react to form a single product. Okay, so two are reacting, forming one. Decomposition is the opposite. One breaks down into two or more simpler substances. There's usually only one reactant. Okay, so for today's lab, I'm going to probably be doing this as a demonstration. If you have these supplies in your house, feel free to try it yourself, but otherwise you can just watch me demonstrate. I'm going to be using a potato, hydrogen peroxide, vinegar, and steel wool. Okay, so some of you guys might have some steel wool in your garage. So we're going to be doing two different reactions, right? We're going to be doing a synthesis, two becoming one, and we're going to be doing a decomposition, one breaking down to two. Okay, so to start with, I've got my vinegar in my beaker here, and I'm going to take some of my steel wool, and I'm going to smoosh it into a ball. And then I'm just gonna add it into my vinegar to coat it. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of use my tweezers to sink it down in there. Now this is kind of unrelated. This is a fun little home hack. You know how people love like antique-y, worn out looking stuff? Oh, I might sneeze from the dust on the steel wool. So if you let steel wool soak in vinegar long enough, it will give you almost like a dye that you can take with your paintbrush and you can paint it on wood, and it makes wood look old. It gives wood that old, like that gray, almost like battered by the sea look. So it's kind of crazy little hack there for how to make things look old. Okay, so we're just gonna let this soak just a few more seconds here. So if we observe our steel wool and our vinegar, there's nothing significant taking place that we can see. Okay, now steel wool is made out of iron. Okay, iron. Yeah, I am gonna sneeze. Excuse me. All right, so our steel wool is made out of iron, and I'm gonna grab my steel wool now out of the vinegar, and now I'm just gonna set it in a plastic cup here, and I'm just gonna let it chill, and it's gonna hang out there for a while. And then we're gonna move on to our other reaction, okay? So I've got hydrogen peroxide and a potato, okay? So I am going to cut myself a slice of potato, okay? So here's my potato, and I'm gonna use a dropper to start with. I'm gonna use a dropper, and I'm gonna grab some hydrogen peroxide. Let me get this in focus the best I can. Okay, I'm going to put a few drops of hydrogen peroxide onto there without dripping. Woo! And it's very hard to see because of the lighting. Let me try this method. There we go. So it's starting to foam and oxygen is being released, right? It's bubbling like crazy. So what I'm going to do to avoid dripping is I'm going to put it into, oh, that doesn't fit. I'm going to put it on a saucer. I'm going to put it on a saucer here, and then I'm going, so you can see it, you can see where the peroxide has hit, and I'm going to pour the rest of my peroxide on now, and try not to drip. But if you can see here, maybe I need to turn off some lights. It's gonna really start fizzing. Let me try and turn off some lights. Okay, there you can kind of see. See all the fizzing that's going on? Okay. So, what's going to happen is I'm going to pause the video and my steel wool is literally going to chill in my cup for a half hour. And we're going to see what happens to it, okay? So we're going to let that reaction continue. But based off of what we've just seen, all right? So we had our steel wool soaked in vinegar, then we pulled it out. We know that steel wool is made out of iron. Slice of potato. A potato is starchy, right? A potato is very starchy. We put hydrogen peroxide on it, and it's like foaming and bubbling, which tells me oxygen's being released, right, in those bubbles. So, which one do you think is the synthesis? Which one do you think is the decomposition? Okay, so I'm going to pause. I'm going to let my steel wool sit, and then we'll see what happens with the rest of this reaction. Just like that, we're back, and it is later. Much, much later, but I want to show you the steel wool. Let me see if I can get that close. Can you see what is going on there? It's rusty. It's all turning. See how close I can get. And it's rubbing off on my hands, so I can like show you the rest. What? Okay, well that's gross. So, synthesis, decomposition, what do we have going on here? Okay, so with our steel wool, we have synthesis. Okay, so we had iron, Fe, plus oxygen. Okay, so the vinegar, all the vinegar did was it act like a catalyst. Okay, it cleaned the steel wool, got all the junky stuff off, and then we had fresh iron to expose to the oxygen of the air. And sitting out in the oxygen, it rusted, making iron oxide. Okay, so how do I balance this chemical equation, right? We've been talking about these formulas that we have to have with conservation of mass. What we have on one side, we've got to have on the other. We've got to balance the equation. So, how do we go about this? Over here, I've got 2 oxygen. Over here, I've got 3 oxygen. So I ask myself, what multiple do 2 and 3 have in common? 6. We've got 6. How does 3 become 6? It gets multiplied by 2. How does 2 become 6? It gets multiplied by 3. So if I put a 2 in front of this, 2 times 3, 6 oxygens. If I put a 3 in front of here, 3 times 2, 6 oxygens. But now, I just put a 2 that also, as a coefficient, applies to my iron here, right? And I already had 2 molecules of iron in my subscript. So what's 2 times 2? 4. So how many irons did I start off with? 4. And now I have a balanced chemical equation that demonstrates synthesis. We started with 2, and they combined to give me rust. All right, so that leaves our potato and our hydrogen peroxide. They must be decomposition. Decomposition. So, chemical formula for hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. Again, our potato, let me get it in front of the camera here, as I drip it all over my laptop. I love you, computer. Don't take that liquid into you. That could make distance learning a new adventure. Okay, so I should film this quick to make sure my computer isn't fried. Okay, so decomposition, hydrogen peroxide, H2O2. Again, the potato acted as a catalyst. It acted as a catalyst. So when I put the hydrogen peroxide onto my potato, the potato, through its starches, gave the decomposition permission to decompose. And that's when all of our bubbles appeared. So that was our hydrogen and our oxygen separated, and our oxygen was being released through all of the bubbles. So in decomposition, we started with a compound, we broke down, boo, to 2. And this equation, it's already balanced. 2 hydrogens, 2 hydrogens, 2 oxygens, 2 oxygens. All right, so there's our example of synthesis and decomposition. So again, in the Google form, you're just going to answer a quick couple review questions to make sure that this is clicking in your mind. All right, thanks.